Because of why I search the deep through endless nights, no time to sleep. The call inside I can't deny. I'll find the light because of why.
Hey everyone, welcome. Have you ever just been staring at a world map, maybe zoning out a little bit, and your eyes land on the North Atlantic, and you just think, wait a second. You've got this huge, white, icy island called Greenland, right next to this smaller, much greener-looking island called Iceland. It feels like a massive, centuries-old prank, doesn't it?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into. Why on earth do these two places have names that seem so completely backward? The answer, it turns out, is this incredible mix of some clever Viking marketing, a little bit of geology, and, believe it or not, a modern twist that you might not see coming.
So first, let's just get the basic picture straight. Iceland, despite its chilly name, is this vibrant volcanic island with green fields and a climate that's surprisingly mild. Greenland, on the other hand, is the biggest island in the world, and almost all of it is buried under a colossal sheet of ice. The paradox is absolutely real.
Now, if you've heard any explanation for this mix-up, it's probably the one about the crafty Viking. This is the story pretty much everyone thinks they know. And you know what? It's a fantastic story. And it all comes down to one legendary and, let's be honest, pretty violent guy.
Meet Erik the Red. This guy had a bit of a temper. He got himself banished from Iceland for killing a couple of people, which seems like a serious occupational hazard for a Viking. So he sailed west and spent his 3 years in exile exploring this massive, icy wilderness. When his time was up, he needed a way to convince people to come join him in this new spot.
So, what was the solution? It was brilliant, really. According to the old Icelandic sagas, Erik came up with the ultimate branding campaign. He called this gigantic block of ice Greenland. Why? Pure marketing. He figured a nice, pleasant name would sound way more appealing than, land of never-ending ice. And guess what? It totally worked.
Okay, but hold on. That amazing marketing story, as great as it is, doesn't actually tell the whole truth. Not even close. To really get to the bottom of the names, we have to look past the sagas and dig into the science of what really makes these two islands tick.
So let's start with Iceland. Why is it so green? I mean, it's sitting right there on the edge of the Arctic Circle. It really should be a frozen wasteland, but it's not, and that's all thanks to a really powerful hidden force.
And that hidden force is the North Atlantic Current, which is part of the huge system we call the Gulf Stream. You can think of it like a giant natural pipeline, pumping warm water all the way from the tropics, from the Gulf of Mexico, up into the north. This current basically wraps around Iceland like a warm blanket, giving it a way milder climate than it has any right to have.
And the effect of this current is just incredible. I mean, even in the middle of a dark winter, it's strong enough to keep Iceland's coasts completely free of ice. It's basically the island's own personal central heating system.
But here's where it gets really fascinating. When the first Viking settlers showed up around the year 874, Iceland was even greener than it is today. Historians think that about this much of the island, 30%, was actually covered in lush birch forests.
Which means, in a great twist of irony, the very same people who named it Iceland are the ones who made it less green. They chopped down the forest for firewood, for building materials, and to create grazing land for all their sheep. This led to massive soil erosion, a problem Iceland is still fighting to fix today.
Okay, so that explains Iceland's surprising greenness. But what about the other side of this puzzle? Why is Greenland so unbelievably icy? Well, the reason comes down to its just sheer, overwhelming scale.
A staggering 80% of Greenland is completely buried under its ice sheet. And we're not just talking about a few glaciers here and there. This is a continent-sized dome of solid, frozen water. At its thickest point, that ice is up to 3 kilometers. That's almost 2 miles deep. An amount of ice that massive has a profound effect on the island's climate.
See, the ice sheet isn't just sitting there. It's actively making Greenland colder. Its immense size creates its own frigid weather system. The bright white surface acts like a giant mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space, which keeps things cool. And its colossal weight has literally pushed the landmass down. On top of all that, it's just way farther north than Iceland, sitting deep inside the Arctic. So, let's just recap real quick.
Iceland's climate is all about that warm Gulf Stream, creating fertile land that used to be covered in forest. Greenland's climate, though, is driven by its high latitude and its own gigantic, self-cooling ice sheet. So yeah, Erik the Red's marketing story is a great tale, but the real answers are written in geography and ocean currents.
But the story doesn't stop in the Viking Age. The relationship between these islands and their names is actually changing as we speak, in a way that is both pretty fascinating and, frankly, deeply concerning.
We're living in a time of rapid climate change, and the Arctic is basically ground zero. Because of something called polar amplification, this part of the world is heating up at a terrifying rate. And of course, that has enormous consequences for a place that is defined by its ice.
All this warming has caused a dramatic speed up in ice loss. For decades, the Greenland ice sheet was melting at a more or less stable rate. But as you can see here, since the 2000s, that rate of loss has quadrupled. We're talking billions of tons of ice just vanishing into the ocean every single year.
And this brings us to one last modern irony. As that huge ice sheet melts, it's uncovering land that hasn't felt the sun in thousands of years. Shrubs, grasses, and other plants are starting to spread. Climate change is, quite literally, making parts of Greenland greener.
Which leaves us with a pretty wild thought to end on. 1,000 years after a Viking's clever marketing trick gave these islands their confusing names, is climate change ironically starting to make those names finally make sense?
So, if you found this little dive into history and science interesting, do us a quick favor. Take a second to like this explainer, share it with a friend who might get a kick out of it, and definitely subscribe for more answers to big questions like this one. And hey, let us know in the comments, what do you think? Will Greenland's name one day be a perfect fit?
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.